Hi there, I'm Tristan Branca, the staff writer at the Medical Post, shooting another video that comes out with every tablet edition.
And I'm Andrew Skelly, the medical news editor for the Medical Post.
So our first topic today is our annual physician OTC survey. This goes out every year, obviously. Andrew, did you want to tell us a little bit about what we saw in this year's survey?
Yes, in fact, this is our 8th annual survey on OTC counseling and recommendations, which is conducted in-house by our research department each year. It's a chance for doctors to tell us what over-the-counter products they like to recommend to patients. And so if you go into your drugstore and see a little logo saying physician's #1 brand, this could very well be where that comes from. And the basic result of the survey is a whole series of charts on a whole range of different products that you would find in the drugstore. And it's, I guess, an interesting way for you to see what your colleagues might be recommending for an anti-nauseant or a blood pressure monitor and that sort of thing. So that is the sort of part of the survey that we do every single year.
And I know for this issue in particular, well, if you go back one, you can see our cover. We focused on homeopathy. Did you maybe want to tell us about some of the results of that part of the survey?
Yeah, so as part of the OTC survey, we like to do some interesting things on top of just asking about various products. Each year we tackle some issues related to things like regulation of products or doctor-pharmacist relations, that sort of thing. This year the main issue that we wanted to address is homeopathic products, which are taking up increasingly large amounts of shelf space in the drugstore. And it's obviously a very contentious issue. As most of you are aware, of course, homeopathy was invented by a physician in the 1790s and employs the principle of like cures like. And the treatments are so incredibly dilute that in theory there shouldn't be any active ingredient left. So not surprisingly, most scientists scoff at this, and indeed 48% of doctors in our OTC survey agreed with the statement that homeopathic products are unsupported by scientific evidence and should not be used. However, 41% agreed that while homeopathic products are just placebos, they can be helpful in certain situations as long as they don't replace proven treatments. And 10%, that's considering there are more than 80,000 active physicians in Canada, that's quite a lot of doctors, agree that homeopathic medicines have well-established efficacy when used appropriately. So in total, that's more than half of Canadian physicians who think homeopathy can be helpful to some degree. And in fact, we also asked doctors if they actually actively recommend homeopathic products. Slightly more than 10%, 13% actively do so. Most commonly in situations where there's no other options available, other treatments have failed, or the patient just doesn't want conventional treatments.
That's pretty surprising, like you mentioned, that because homeopathy obviously isn't, well, for the most part, very well regarded amongst physicians. I'm just wondering, what. Sorry, I forgot my talking points. What are the physicians saying who aren't in favor of this?
Well, I think the skeptics out there will be quite dismayed about the high degree of at least tacit support of homeopathy amongst physicians. In fact, if you read our cover story, there is one doctor who's quoted as saying that he wondered why the 48% of doctors who said homeopathy should not be used, he wondered why that wasn't 99.9% of physicians. But maybe we shouldn't be so surprised about these results in a way, because I think doctors are simply trying their best to navigate a situation where patients are able to access these products for themselves at the drugstore, And in fact, those products have an official stamp of approval from Health Canada. In our article, you'll find that there are about 8,500 homeopathic products that have official approval from Health Canada. And in Ontario, the profession of homeopathy itself is now regulated in a way similar to how the medical and nursing professions are regulated.
So would it be fair to say that doctors' concerns about homeopathy has more to do with how the regulators are treating it more than how individual doctors are treating it, or maybe less so?
I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction with Health Canada. We also asked doctors about that, and basically roughly half of Canadian doctors don't think Health Canada is doing a good job of regulating these products. This includes natural health products in general, as well as OTC products, and they just aren't comfortable with the safety and effectiveness of over-the-counter drugs that their patients have access to. So there is a lot of unhappiness. At the same time, I think doctors are resigned to these products being out there and available and being used by their patients.
Okay. Let's move on to our next topic, which is ransomware.
And I should say right off the bat that I have never come across that term before, so I will have to get you to explain what exactly is ransomware.
Sure. So ransomware is a form of malicious software that's being used increasingly to target physicians and healthcare providers. What it essentially does is when a computer or network becomes infected, it'll lock it down. So while the hackers won't have access to the health data, the physicians also won't be able to either. And so until they pay a ransom, that information essentially remains locked down on their computer, and that can obviously cause a lot of problems for doctors who rely on that information every day.
So is this something that Canadian doctors should be concerned about?
Yes, it seems that way. So right now, the highest profile of attack of its kind was actually in the U.S., where Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital got locked down, I think, for a couple of weeks, and they had to pay a $17,000 ransom, roughly, to get their records back. And they tried to make do with paper for a little while, but it ended up, not working. In Canada, there have been two, not quite at the same scale, but there have been two attacks on hospital networks here, one in Simcoe and one in the Ottawa area. But we also spoke to, for this particular article, an ethical hacker who mentioned that actually a lot of individual physician offices have been targeted, mostly because they don't have the IT software to protect their own health records, and because they obviously because the records that they hold are very valuable. So
it sounds kind of scary. Is there anything doctors can do to fend off these attacks?
Yes, so there are a couple things that the security expert mentioned that doctors can do. The most important thing he said was to have a solid backup plan in place, and that involves not only backing up your medical records to somewhere ideally off-site, but also testing those backups to ensure that when you need them, they actually work. He mentioned that there was one case where a guy had tested all his medical records, or hadn't tested all his medical records, and then when the time came to use all the ones that he'd been backing up religiously, they actually didn't work. So that's one of the things. The other thing you can do is run sort of standard security patches on your system, make sure they're up to date. Probably need an IT guy to do that for you. But another one of the reasons doctors are targeted is because those kinds of regular updates aren't always possible. In a hospital, for example, what usually happens is you'll have a simple computer, but a lot of the times out of date, running like a $500,000 MRI machine. And so doctors are told when they get that machine, not to mess with the programming, or the people at the hospital are told not to mess with the machine or run any kind of security updates. And that makes those kinds of things vulnerable because they're connected to the network. So one of the other things that the security expert recommended was that the vendors of these sorts of machines and the people who administer these networks also need to take on some of the responsibility in addition to individual doctors running their own practice. So I think that'll do it. One more. Log on to our website for more content, and I think that'll be it from us. Thanks.